So you'll remember I've got the project pulled up from Thursday. We were working on the Cowboy Boots project. And you'll remember what we did yesterday, what we did Thursday. We built this REST API, right? And you'll remember that I tested it with Postman, right?
Yeah.
Am I in a room all by myself? I hear Troy.
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking. So you want to make sure you get Postman installed so you can play around with some of this stuff. Cool? Okay. So what I want to build, and I've kind of said this already, is I want to build some pages to be able to use that API and to manipulate my data, right? So if you've got the application pulled down right now, you should be able to go in here into npm scripts and start up the nodemon script to start server. So if we look at the website right now, you'll see as far as what we can do, we really only can do one of two things. We can go look at the list of products, and then we can go look at an individual product, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's going to come next is going to be to add an add button. I'm going to add a button to be able to add a new product to the database, right? So where might be a sensible place to add that button?
That would have to be for the web admin only.
Okay. It might make sense to do that, yeah. So I could build an entire admin API, right? A set of admin pages for them. But maybe for the moment, just to keep it simple, I'm just going to put it on the front page, right? Because we haven't gotten into, how do we distinguish, how do we have user accounts and deal with logins and all those things, right? So what I'm going to do right now is just add it to the homepage. You with me? You following with me?
Yeah.
The goal is to keep that example simple. Yes, you could put this on a back-end API, but the actual workflow of how you do it is not that different from it being here on the front end versus being on the back end. But it's definitely easier to do it here. Okay. So the first thing, I'm going to actually put it in this little corner up here in the top right of the page, so we can get to it pretty quick. So which view do I need to go and change to add it to there? Which view?
That would just be the products page then, right? I can't remember how you have it listed.
Mm-hmm. So you look at what I have, right? I've got a home view and I've got product view, right? I probably should extract this. I probably should rename this one as product list. And I'll do that in a bit. Because I'd probably I might want to split up my product list and my home page, but right now they're the same page. So that's why that name is there. Okay. So if I want to put it over in the top right corner, right? How do I get it there? Where should I put it into this view? Should I put it up outside of main? Should I put it before or after the H1? Where should I put it?
You're talking about putting in a button to add, right?
So I want to put in a button to add products, right? So where would I put that in the HTML? Somebody give me a suggestion, right? I want to add it to show up here.
How about the nav bar?
How about the
I know that's home view.
Well,
yeah, you can.
The nav bar would be all the way up here, right? My goal is to get it here just on the home page.
Just create a div above products within main.
Okay. So you say put it up here?
Let's see where. Oh yeah, right. You might have to change your H1 thing, or well, no, I guess that's all right.
Let's look at this real quick. So just thinking about the layout, right? Is that in the right place?
Well, I don't know. I mean, as good as any, I guess.
Well, but I said specifically I want it over here. I'm very specific on that. I want it over on the right. Okay. Mo, you got an idea? Or are you absent? What about Corey? Corey, you got a theory?
No, not off the top of my head. I was looking at what Paul was doing, and I was trying to figure out.
Is there would you put maybe you have to add something to that product, and then on the div do a text align right?
What on what product are you referring to?
Well, the div that's around add product. I don't know if you put like an H3 or another div around it, and then above the level that's at, then do a text align right class.
Okay, why would I need another div?
Just the way that I've gotten Text Center to work for stuff whenever I needed to do it.
Okay, we don't need another layer. Sometimes we do. Yes, sometimes we do need to add another layer. But that's typically if you're saying you're adding you have something that's a inline element, you need to put it into something that's a block. But remember that a div is already a block, right?
Okay, then text align right.
So let's say text right. Okay, well I've got it here, and that might work. But what if I want it further down? What if I want it on the same line as this header? Corey, you were kind of answering that, I guess.
To get on the same line as products?
Yep. I want to get it down here so it's on the same line. Because right now it's appearing above, right? Does anybody know why it's appearing above? Can anybody explain why it's appearing above the header?
Because it's above it in the code. Like
okay.
It's from top down.
Okay. Well, that's right.
Does it have to do with inline?
Okay. Has to do with you're sort of on the right track.
It's a block element.
It's a block element, right? So H1 and div are both block elements, right? So if I put it before, it will be above because block elements, they're kind of a separate line, right? So if I put it above, it will be above. If I put it below, it will be below, right? So neither of those options, putting it above or below, right, will get it onto the same line, right? So if I'm dealing with blocks, I need it to be right inside of that block. Does that make sense? Are you following with me? So if I want to have it to be on the same line, it needs to be not before or after, but inside. Okay. So if I want to put this into the H1, right, can I take this and just toss it into here? And have it be
try it
side by side? Okay. So it's appearing very big now, but it's still underneath. Do you see that?
Do you need Flexbox?
I probably need Flexbox, right? So people were asking, well, where are some of the good places to use Flexbox? Well, this is a place where, yes, you could use floating. This is one place where you could use floating actually, but just doing like a text right or a text center using margins won't get you there. Does that make sense? Because we do need a flex container, realistically speaking. Okay. So because I've got text and then I've got a div, that div creates a new line. I probably want all of these elements that I want to appear together. I need them to be some sort of inline element, really, right? And more specifically, I probably want this to be a button anyway, right? So if I I switch it over to a button tag. Is a button tag an inline or a block?
Inline.
Say inline.
It's inline. So just switching that over will actually get it to be side by side, but I've got some, maybe some weird behaviors happening. I need to do a little bit with the styling, but you'll also notice that the text is ginormous, right? The text is ginormous. And why is the text ginormous?
Because it's in the H1.
Because it's in the H1. So I've got two ways to fix that. I could either, in terms of the size of that, I could either effectively pull it out of the H1, and that would reduce the size of it, or I could reduce the size of. I could just reduce or change the size of the actual button. So either of those approaches will work. I think the one I'm going to end up pursuing is effectively trying to pull it out of the H1. But let's apply the button classes first. So if you remember for Bootstrap, BTN and BTN, well, you want to tell it what color it is. Yeah, and typically I'm going to start with primary as my main go-to button first. Now, built into there, you'll notice as soon as I added the button class, you notice how it got smaller. See that? As soon as I added the button classes, the text got smaller.
Yeah.
So if I inspect it, let's kind of see where that came from. So if I look at there, I can actually see that the button class, where is it? There it is, font size 1 rem. So when I apply the BTN class, it's actually resetting the font size to 1 rem. That's what it makes it back to being smaller. Okay. As far as kind of cleaning that up, I probably do want to change this to camel case. So like add product, like so. That makes it look a little bit better. And I probably want to now I'd like to take it and move it to the right? So we talked about I could do that with Flexbox, right? I can use Flexbox to move these things around. Okay. So one approach I could take is well, this product needs to be then in effectively a span because I need it to be an item, right? So if I'm going to have them both in the H1, I would need to structure it like that. Does that make sense? So they're both inline elements. Yeah. But what I'm going to do, because I don't really want it in the button. Probably I don't really need it in the H1. I'm going to actually move it out. And once I've moved it out, I don't really need to put a span around that. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a div around both of those two pieces, which is going to be my flex container. So remember, to start a flex container, we need to change the display type to flex. So dflex. And maybe I want this to be a flex row. It should already be one, but to be more explicit, that's what I'm going to set there. Okay, so now I've got them horizontal to each other, right? But I want the add product button to be on the right, and I want products to be in the center, right? So why are they appearing on the left right now? Why are those both appearing on the left in the browser?
That's just what they do. That's how they stack up. If you're using the flex row there.
Okay, I'm looking for more than that's just what they do. Caleb, you're trying to say something?
That is just the default. I don't know what it's called.
Okay.
Can't think of the word.
I think you're maybe thinking alignment. Maybe.
Probably.
The thing you need to understand is you can't just say, well, this is the way that it behaves by default, because then you don't know how to change it, right? You have to be able to explain the default behavior to be able to understand how to change that default behavior. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So the default behavior is a few things, right? So the default behavior has to do with what the grow properties are set to, but it also has to do with the alignment, right? So the alignment is flex start by default, which means it's aligned to the start of the container. The other thing that's happening is by default grow is 0, which means that neither of these items grow, right? So they're just starting out at their default size, their default width. Does that make sense? So we can manipulate both of those knobs, right? We can manipulate the alignment, but we can also manipulate the grow. Do you see how that's important to understand, that both of those knobs are available?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's play with the alignment knob real quick. So in here, if I want to align, this would be the main axis. Which property do I want to set? Which one's on the main axis?
Justify.
So justify what?
Content.
Justify content. Okay, so justify content, what would be the one on the cross axis?
Align item.
Align items. So align items on the cross, justify content on the main. Okay, so let's say we test that. Justify content. And if it's starting at the start, well, let's just try to flip it around to the end and see what happens. Okay, so we know that's justify content is definitely the one that's affecting the main axis, and that I can apply that, right? So I can either do that and move everything to the end. I can move everything to the start. What are some of the other options for justify content?
Yeah.
There's center.
There's center. Okay, so I could say center. Moving back here.
Between.
All right, let's try between. Okay, that actually looks pretty good, right? But why is that working that way?
Because there should be one in the middle too, wouldn't there be?
What do you mean there's one in the middle? You're right, there's something in the middle.
Yeah, it's like it's not there, but there should be one there, if that makes sense.
Well, they're not necessarily that there should be, but because there isn't. So there's two elements, right? So justify between says split up all of the space evenly between basically between the things that are there. So it's between item 1 and item 2, right? So it ends up taking all of that and putting it here. Now, if I were to change the code a little bit and have something to the right, say I add a span in here, to the left, then you see how it's centered now.
Yeah.
Because when it divvies up the space that way, then I have effectively something on the left, something in the middle, and something on the right. So it takes half of the space here and half the space there, right? So if I wanted to split it up that way, between's a great option for that. Okay, but I'm actually going to pull out that span because I think that probably looks the best here, is actually having it the products on the left and the add product over on the right. Cool. One thing I'll notice, just with having changed it to a flexbox, I did have one side effect here in the fact that my button just got really tall. You see that?
Yeah.
So my button got really tall because the default cross-axis alignment, right? The main axis alignment is start, but the cross by default is stretch, right? So because it's set to stretch, it's now making that taller. So I also need to change the alignment on the cross axis because of that. So we're going to say align items center. Or in this case, I might want to say baseline because they're both text. I'm going to try center though. Yeah, I think that's what I want. So I've got the button back to the height that it's supposed to be.
What's baseline look like?
Baseline, in theory, should align the text, the bottom of the text on both sides, which I think what that would mean, yeah, you see, so that pushes it down a little bit because that means the bottom of this text is aligned with the bottom of that text. And the reason that they're different is because these text sizes, the font sizes are different. See that?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Smith, can you start the stream again?
Either
kind of fuzzy at the top.
Yep, I can. It's back. So either of those work. Baseline versus center, and really which one you use is tends to be more of a judgment call. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
because you could just put padding on the bottom of the
right.
both of them if you wanted to.
Yeah, to some degree. Well, it matters where I want things aligned, right? Padding can also have padding and margin can have an effect as well, but where you start out does matter. Okay, so I want to create a little bit of space just to be underneath those two. So I'm going to add a little bit of margin underneath the container, the flex container. So MB3 is what I'm going to add there. Okay, so little layout thing there. The only reason one of the reasons I wanted to at least spend a little bit of time there is to just talk about, again, reminding you what some of those flex properties are, because things like this come up and it's like, well, how do I get that little button where I need it to be, right? Because that inevitably ends up being one of those things that you run into right away. This is also, things like this are a good reason to do a screen mock-up before you get started, because sometimes you come in with, if you just start writing the code, you kind of say, well, that's just the way it is, right? And skipping past maybe what would be the best way for it to look and things like that, for instance, right? Or getting bogged down in some of those details. Okay, so we've got a button, right? Button doesn't do anything. Got it?
Yep.
Okay, let's make the button do something. So if I want to hook up some JavaScript, let's see. If I look at the main layout, right, you see I've already hooked up main.js. So in theory, I should be able to just put some logic into main.js and have that button do something, right?
I don't know if it's just me, but I'm still seeing your local host.
I think that I need to change Windows. Yep.
Yeah, Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So main handlebars, that layout has main.js there. It's referenced. So I can then go to public and JS, main.js, and start putting code in, right? Okay. So if I'm going to put code in, and we saw this in the example we watched a minute ago, remember I need to start with a ready handler for jQuery stuff. Wait till the page is loaded and then do things, right? Now I want to say, let's do something when that button is clicked, right? So what selector should I use? Ben, what selector should I use? Sheridan, do you have a suggestion?
Sorry, my mic was muted.
Okay. Yeah. Ben?
So you said this is for when the button's clicked, right?
Right. I want to respond to the button being clicked.
So when we just use a onClick handler?
Okay. Okay. But what's my selector?
Wouldn't you select the actual button?
Okay.
You would use an ID for it, wouldn't you? Whatever
Okay.
ID, so I put on the button.
Okay. So what's the ID of the button?
Oh, can you go back? It doesn't have an ID.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't given it one yet.
I haven't given one yet. So what would be a good ID for that? Probably add product or something like that. So let's say.
Well, Mr. Smith, don't you want to? Wait. So don't you want to like add like maybe like an identifier, like as an attribute? So like then you know exactly what ID every like, because whenever you add product, it could be like any product.
When I click this button, do I know what details I'm going to add yet?
No.
I don't, right? There's only going to be one add button.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Maybe like an identifier, like as an attribute, so then you can know exactly and send it to the data, like to the server, and say this is the exact like product.
I think you're missing some. I think you're.
I may be overthinking it as well.
Yeah, you're overthinking it. You don't have the full picture yet, but the idea is there's only going to be one, and I don't need to add anything additional to it. But you'll see that in a minute. So I want to say, let's select it. So add product. So we're going to say when it's clicked, we want to do something. With me so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so basic, just skeleton. And now this is where things come in, and you're where you're thinking, Mo, is like, well, I need to know what data I need as far as adding the product, right?
Yeah.
So in here, really, I need to ask the user that, right? I need to somehow ask the user that information about the product, right? I can't just have the user click a button and know what it is, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So somehow I need to get that input from the user. Okay. And the way that I would recommend doing that is really the best way to do that is to create a whole nother page for them to do that. But let's start with maybe just doing things with some JavaScript prompts, right? You remember you used prompts maybe in your first semester to get input from the user?
Yep.
So let's try that as a mechanism. So I know in my schema, let's see what tables we need. So I need to know a name, a category, and a price, right? So I need 3 pieces of data from the user. Okay, so kind of the poor man's way of doing that. I might say const name is equal to prompt. And I might say, what is the name? And I might prompt them again and say, what is the category? And then I need to ask them for their price. So let's prompt them again. Okay. So we've got that data from the user. And if I test this real quick in the browser, should be when I click add product, you see this pop up. Type in a name, type in a category, type in a price, right? So not a terribly user-friendly interface, but it is enough to get us started, right? You with me? So,
Yep.
huh?
I said, yep.
So we're just kind of walking towards that. Okay. So remember we talked about using AJAX, right? So now I have enough data to be able to send an AJAX request, right? So I could send an AJAX request to the API that we've already built, right? So in terms of thinking about the API, remember we created an API here to insert products. It's a post to API/product. Okay, so that's where I want to send my request to. I'm going to send a post to API/product. It's going to say it's $.ajax. And what I'm going to do, I need to pass in the data that we need, right? So we need to know the method that's going to be sent as, and that would be post. The URL is going to be /API/product. Data type, I would expect this to go through as JSON. And finally, the data that we want to send is the data that we've collected from the user, right? So that I need to create an object, and that would be maybe the name, the category, and the price. Any questions?
No.
Okay. So let's give this a try. Let's see what happens with just this. You remember in the video we kind of looked at the network tab, right? You can see in the network tab any requests that are going to the server and coming back. There's already some that's been sent, so I'm going to clear those out, hitting this button here. So let's add a product now. So let's see. So name of that product is test. It's an other as category, and it's $100. All right, let's hit OK. So as soon as I hit that, it should have gone off and did something. Although I think maybe, did I just not save my code? I think I did save my code. Try that again. Because nothing seemed to happen. So I must have missed something. Test, category, other, 100. Oh, there it goes. Right, so we initiated that request. You see that? In fact, I can see the response came back as 107. You remember looking at this on Thursday?
Yeah.
Do you remember what that 107 represents?
Is that the ID?
That's the ID. So that's the ID of the product. So in fact, if I look at the database now, or if I look at this page, I should find that test product, right? I do a Control F, I don't find the product. What's the problem? So I've added it to the database.
Did we not refresh the database so that it updates the page?
Well, I didn't refresh the page. I didn't refresh the list of products on the page. So I would need to do a refresh here to see it. Which usually won't in the end end up to be a problem because we're going to have a page refresh in here anyway if we're sending it to another page. But you can see now that that product's been added. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now I'm using AJAX to take that data from the user and then send it off as a post request to the server. Okay. So that's kind of a fairly simplified version. One of the things you should notice in here, does it matter where the data comes from? It doesn't really, right? So the data that you send can come from anywhere, right? It doesn't have to come from a form. It doesn't have to it may come from variables you have in your JavaScript. You could prompt the user for those inputs. You can get the data anyway and pass it through as part of this. So there's a broad variety of ways that you can get the data and send it to the server. Okay. Now will have probably remembered I need to do something in response to maybe when I get the result back.
You have to do a done and
right. So I want to do a done. And let's just call that res like we did in the other video. So res. And then I want to maybe show that data to the user. And a very quick way to do that, just because I'm using the prompts, I might as well just say alert res, right? So that'll show whatever came back from the server. We'll just see it and we'll pop up. Cool?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I want to say if anything goes wrong, let's do something with that as well.
I thought it was called a fail.
Oh, yep, it would be fail. I'm misremembering. I'm thinking then and done. But you're right. Or then and catch. Okay, fail. I think it was the XHR text status. And then we had the error. Okay. So I might want to say, let's say alert here as well, and maybe I'll combine a few things. So I'll use a little template string and I'll say $, let's put the text status at the top, and then /n to create a new line and put the error underneath that. So if there's anything wrong, that will give us a quick check for it. And maybe I want to check that logic right now. So I'll point it at product 2. And so I'm going to hit add product and just leave all those blank. And so you can see the error not found, right? Is that right? Text status and error. I feel like something's not right there. Error not found. Maybe that's fine. Okay.
Is there no text status because there's no text in it?
Maybe. Let's see what's going on there. I'm going to go to the browser. I'm going to go to sources so we can debug it, because I can go into here, go into JS, main JS, and I can put a breakpoint on it. So if I hit add product, okay. Let's see. So text status is error, and not found is the error object. Something's not right there. Something's not right. Did I switch the order of those two?
No, I think they were.
Huh. Okay. That's just odd, because I would expect it to be the other way around. Anyway, because I would expect this not found to be the text status, not the error here. But it is what it is. Okay, so then what maybe I'm going to do then with the code is switch it around a little. I'll just leave it as is.
Unless the text status is an error because there's nothing in there, you know.
Yeah. I'll just leave that as is. So either way, that gives us a way to at least see what happened if it went wrong. I'd probably want to clean it up if I was doing this for reals. But at least then I can see what's going on. So I'm going to go back to API product, and let's try it with that. So I'll leave this blank. Okay. All right. Now we see in this case it's still going down to that fail handler. So here it's saying error internal server error. See that?
Actually, no, I can't. That's it's fuzzy again.
Okay. Well, so then just trust me that it says error internal server error. So that means there's a 500 error, which that means from the server side, right? That just means that there was an uncaught exception, right? So internal server error doesn't give us very much info, right? Where could I find out what actually went wrong? Where did I find out what actually went wrong?
The database, maybe?
Maybe in the database. Well,
The
problem is it didn't get to the database.
Can we debug?
We could debug. Okay. Well, where are you thinking debugging? The front end or the back end?
The back.
The back end.
Okay. Which I think you're on the right track. The back end's usually a good place to jump and see what's going on. Which, as it turns out, right, there is something there. So it says we try to insert the project, and it says error truncated wrong value for field, incorrect decimal value blank for price, right? So on the back end, it just crashed, right? It just said, oh, you gave me a blank space instead of price when we started to insert that, and maybe that's not real good as an error message. You don't want it to just crash. Cool. So we might need to fix that, right? And that's actually a problem with our API, right? So in our API, I'm not validating that what I get from the user is valid data. Do you see that?
Yeah.
I'm just telling it to take whatever data that the user gave me and insert it into the database, right? So tomorrow I want to talk about how to make that better, right? I want to talk about how to do some validation on that data. But for one, let's kind of see what should be happening. Well, if there's an exception here, well, I do have a catch, right? If there's an exception, I do have a catch, right? So it's going off this next, which means that it should actually be sending me back some HTML. So if I do a little looking under network, right, you see how this is red?
Yeah.
And you should see that it says status code 500, right? So it's coming back with status code 500. And in fact, if I look at the HTML it's sending me back, I can see that information. You see that? So it's sending me back an HTML page that does actually say that the price was invalid, right? But part of the problem is it's sending it back as HTML, right? My code can't deal with it because it's HTML. It needs the response from the server to come back as JSON. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So I might need to rejigger the way I do things so that I can get that. Well, let's do let's try a very easy thing. So rather than calling next here, what happens if I say maybe response response.json, because remember response.json sends JSON back to the client. What happens if I say, let's send back the error, and let's see what happens there. If I do that instead, let's try it one more time, leaving everything blank. Okay. Well, what I saw in the last pop-up was it said, let me do that again because I skipped past it too quick. So in the alert that comes back, it just says object, object, right? It actually doesn't give me any helpful information. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So I need to probably fix that there. But if I look at what happens here, I can see kind of what came back. Let me get back to hit X there. So we can see now it came back with a status code of 200 instead, right? It was a 500 error code previously because something went wrong, but as soon as I switched it over to this, it's not coming back as a 500 code. You see that?
Yeah.
Which actually is a bit of a problem because that's saying, well, it was successful, which it really wasn't. Okay, but I do see that it has taken the error and turned it into some sort of object and sending back the object now. Okay, so let's rejigger that a little bit so it's easier to work with in my code. So for one, I want to say, well, let's set the status code, and let's set it back to maybe 500. So it does come back as a 500, and I might want to nest this inside of like error property to make sure I know it's actually an error. Okay. So if I try that, okay, so it's still back as an internal server error and network. You can see it's now back to being a 500 code, right? Because I called that status 500, and you can see that it's now nested inside of an error object, right? So if I wanted to deal with this in my code, that would be easier to deal with it than trying to deal with it as an HTML page, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about how to build an error handler, error middleware, but there is some stuff that I can do where I can effectively tell it to, instead of rendering this as HTML, I can, if I build my own middleware, I can have it automatically do this and change how it returns the response if the client's expecting JSON. So I can make that change. I haven't made that change yet. That's one thing we can do if we're trying to maybe get an easier way to look at what's going wrong. Okay, but we're still getting into here. Now, assuming that I put in all the data right, you saw it still comes back. It's still coming back as this object thing, right? So I'd like it to kind of be in a way that maybe we could read it. So let's say I do, if the response comes back, we saw that it's an array. So maybe I'm going to do res0, and that should give me the code, the ID that's there. So alert res0 should show that number. So add product, test2, other, and I probably need to refresh this before I start. Okay. Add product, test2, other, and $200. Okay, so I get back 108. So we got kind of the structure of a working ad, right? So whatever I enter into these prompts will be effectively sent to the server, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I hope you can kind of start to see the pieces falling together to how this might work, right? How you might be able to use this in your application.
Yeah, I got a question. Why did REST Sub-Zero, why did that return just the ID?
Because what was returned, what was res? Res was an array, right? Array with a single element in it. Do you remember that?
Yeah, okay. So you're doing your callback, and then...
So look at the, if I'm looking in the network tab, do you see how it's being sent back?
Oh, okay, I get it. It would be more if there was other stuff, but that's all there is.
Yeah, yeah. So right now all it's returning is that, just an array with the ID in there. And that's kind of with how we've built it. I would probably put some more information in there. In reality, I would probably want to send the entire product back. That would be my usual expectation, but that's all it's sending back from the server right now. Okay, so one thing I might do from that, for instance, well, let's say I got that 108 number, right? Could I maybe redirect the browser to that page? You think? Maybe we can redirect the browser to the page where looking at the product, right? Because I know that the path to that is /product 108, right?
Yeah.
So I might want to, in response to that, maybe redirect the browser. So maybe instead of showing an alert, maybe let's say window.location is equal to, I think I need to set the path. I need to set it to what it currently is. But the problem is I have kind of a relative path, right? So, because I could set it to HTTP localhost 3000, whatever, etc., right? But that's not going to work once I push it out there. Does that make sense? So I need some way to tell it where to go. So effectively, I need sort of a relative URL, right? So in JavaScript, there's a class named URL. And I can use that to work with URLs. So I can say new URL. That will construct a URL. And it actually takes two things. So it takes, first of all, it takes the a base URL that I want to build off of, which would actually be, well, where is it right now, right? So it's at window.location is what's in the address bar. And then I want to change it with a relative URL. So I would say take the current, add the relative URL. This would be product / product 0. Maybe I do this as maybe a template string. So boop, boop, boop. So this is going to end up building up an absolute URL to where I want to go. So I take my relative URL, and then I need to turn it into an absolute. And then I think I can just set this as such. I think I can just say window location equals URL. Let me check that. So back to the home. Let's try to add product. Test 3. Other. And 300. Okay, and I think I forgot to put breakpoints in there before I did that. So, of course, I've got invalid syntax. What did I do wrong? Failed to construct URL, invalid base URL. So what is window location?
I thought you didn't need window. You could just use you could omit that because it's implied or something.
It is often implied, but I generally do go ahead and include it. I do generally include it as a way to be more descriptive. Otherwise, it can be hard to read what the code is doing. So I want to watch the window location property. Add property. Oh, okay. Got it. So window location is not actually, okay. Window location is not actually a URL. I think it's window location.href is what I'm missing. Because I can kind of see, you see I'm watching the window.location field.
Yeah.
And you can see it's got href inside here. I think that's what I want. So going back here, instead of window.location, I'm going to do window.location.href. Okay, save that. Back here. Okay, add product. I do need to put in valid data, don't I? Oh, I don't need that breakpoint anymore. Okay, so test for other 400. Okay, so that's promising. href is what I want it to be. And I still got an error. Invalid base URL. Do I have to take that and turn it into a URL first? I might need to take that and turn it into a URL first. I swear I've done this before, and I didn't think it took that much. I didn't think it took this much code. I feel like I'm missing something. JavaScript resolve relative URL. Oh, I might have it backwards. URL MDN. I think I've got my arguments in the wrong order. The constructor for URL. Oh, right. So the constructor for a URL takes the relative path before the base. So I've got them switched. That's my problem. Is this needs to be window location as the second argument, not the first one, which is why it wasn't working. So those need to switch, and then go back here, refresh. Well, something's not right. Okay, add product test 5, other 500. Okay, is this finally going to work? Oh, there we go. Okay, so I've got a URL. Yeah, so that's all it was. I just had them in the wrong order. I didn't need to do window.location.href, just window.location. Okay, so I've built up a relative, I've taken this relative URL and turned it into an absolute URL. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And I couldn't just do that with concatenation. The reason being is that then I'd have to deal with a lot of special rules of, well, where am I at already? Versus using this window, using the URL builder, goes ahead and because I'm starting at a slash, goes back up to the root of the website. So that's why I'm really doing that. Okay, so now that I add test 5, you can see that it takes me to the page. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So automatically redirects me there, which is what I was trying to get to. Okay. And I can clean this up a little bit because I don't need the URL variable here. So I can kind of minimize that down to one line. So the window location changes to this URL. Okay. You can start to see how this is becoming a little bit more user-friendly.
Yeah.
So we're kind of working our way there. Now, one of the things that's still outlying, right? Anytime I want to add a product, I probably don't want to do it through these prompts, right? So I have kind of 2 ways I could do it instead. One way would be to pop up a sort of modal dialog, right? Where you have those 3 fields. Another way to do it would be to do it as a completely separate page. Both of those are kind of similar in the way that they work out. But the way I'm going to walk you through is how to do it as a separate page. Cool? So let's add, if I want to have that be another page, I probably need to add another view, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's add a new view to the views folder, and we're going to call this product add dot handlebars. Okay, so this is the view to add a product, and if I kind of look at some of my other pages, for instance, we'll see that I started them all with main, class container, MT5. So I'm margin top 5. So I'm going to go ahead and start this view that same way for consistency's sake. Okay. So that's the start of my product add page. Okay. Now, what would be the most user-friendly way to put this in here? What would you probably expect?
I mean,
A form, right? So I'm going to put a form in here. So I've got main, and then I've got a form. What should I set my... Do I need to set any attributes on this form? What attributes do I need to set?
method in action.
Huh? Okay.
Method in action.
So a method, right? So what would the method be here?
Post.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the action?
Would it be the URL that you just made?
What do you mean
'Cause
that?
the one that we just made in the product.js. Or not product, sorry, the main.
Well, what do you mean here? Probably this one.
Yeah.
That would be a sensible one. So let's say we post it to /API/product. As it turns out, we're not going to use both of those properties, but we can put them there. ID is the other important one this is really the important one that I have to add for this because I'm going to do this all through JavaScript. So this would be like maybe the add product form. If that makes sense. So the add product form, and then when I submit that, when I fill this in, right? So what do I need to add next? So I've got a form. What's next?
Control fields.
The controls?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do I add the controls? What's the first control I should add?
Label.
Okay. So a label. Okay.
Did you put them in control group?
Control grouping?
Yeah. I
Okay.
like that.
You're right. What do you mean by that?
A div with the class control group or group control. I don't know.
Yes, I need a div. You're right on that. And yes, it needs to have a class, but you have the wrong class. Anybody give me the right class?
Form control.
Form group.
No. Form
group.
Form group.
Needs to be form group. That's a specific name that you have to use. Yeah. So form group needs to have a label, needs to be an input. Do you remember what the first field that we're inserting is?
The name.
The name. Okay. So name. What attributes do I need to add here? Well, I need to add an ID. And maybe this is name. And
This one.
name is name. Yes?
Form control goes on the actual input, not the guy. Remember?
Correct. Yes. Yes. So form control goes here. Yes. Does the label need anything else?
Yeah, it needs the for
Okay.
to connect the name of the input.
Uh-huh.
So it would be name.
Yep. And remember that's necessary for accessibility. And I probably want to go ahead and put in a place to put an error should I need it. So I'm going to go ahead and put a div underneath and give this a class of text danger. So this would be, if I need to put an error, I might put it here. So I've got the name field. Is there anything I'm missing with this group? Anything that's still missing?
The ID for the error message.
Okay, so you want an ID there? Okay, so let's say we do want to do that. So what ID would you use?
Just name error.
That makes sense. Sounds good. So name error. Okay. What kind of input is this?
Type text.
It's a type text. So I'm still missing that. Type text. And okay, so that's good. I think that's all I need here. So let's go on to the next field, which should be category. So change a few things. This would be ID category error. And finally, I need the price, right? So price. What type should this one, though, be? Probably not type text, right?
I know there's a number, but I don't know if that's the right one.
Okay, so number would be good. What's the minimum value that a price can be?
I mean, technically 1 cent, I guess.
Okay, so let's say min is 0.01. Okay.
Well, how would you handle if you got free spurs with your boats? Purchase of like free pairs or something.
Then I would say the min is 0. Right? If it can be free, then the min would be 0. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's say, what else do I need to add in here? Is there any way I can specify how many spaces this should have? How many decimal spaces this should have? Because I want to have 2 decimal places, right?
Yeah.
So one thing I can do, if I remember right, if you set the step, that will take care of it. So step of 0.01. Okay. All right, so we've got 3 fields. I still need a place to put my button. So I still need a submit button. Class form group. And in there, I want a button. This is going to be a submit button, so it's type submit. And maybe this is add. That's the text of the button. Okay.
Don't you also need class on the button, like class button primary?
Okay. So class btn primary. Any other classes I need to add?
Just btn.
Just btn, right? I need to make sure I have both of those. Okay, so btn primary. So can I view this now? Do I have a way to look at this view? Can I look at this view and test it in the browser?
You have to add the route.
I have to add a route. Okay. So where would I add the route? Well, I need to add it to server.js, at least at the moment, right? And maybe I could add it here at the end. What method should I specify? This is a get, this is a post, this is a put.
It's post.
It's a post?
Put.
Oh no, we're getting, so it's a get.
Right, because I need a way to see the blank form, right?
Yeah.
I need a way to see the blank form. So I need a get, and, well, I need a route to that. So I could do /product, but I need to specify this as this is the add page. So I might do product add. Does that make sense? So maybe the route to this. And then we need a callback. So request, response, and next. So if I've got that, okay, that will give me a route to this. And then I just need to say res.render. And let's render the product add page. Anything else I need? Let's try it. So product add. Okay. Something's not right. It says product not found. See that?
Yeah.
Why did I get that? Where did that come from? Well, when I added it, product not found kind of looks like this message here, right? Kind of looks like that message. So why is it running this code? Why is it running this code here instead of running that code down here?
Oh, it's because you have to change the. It's trying to use it as an ID.
Right. It's trying to use that word add as an ID. So I need to change the order. So I need to move this up first. So product add route needs to be before the product ID route. Okay, so that's good. What happened with the title bar?
It broke.
Broke. Okay. Because I didn't set a title, did I? So it's just showing the URL, right? So I want to remember to specify a title, which I've already got in my layout. So, title is maybe add product. That sounds good. So add product, check that real quick, and it's here. But one of the things I'll notice, maybe just a usability issue. This page doesn't have a title. It has a title here, but it doesn't have a title in the actual page, right? So I can't really tell where I'm at. Do you see that? So you'll kind of remember that all of your pages should probably have an H1. So that's one of the things I need to remember to go back and do here. I want to go back in and add an H1 at the top that says add product. Okay. And I probably also would want a breadcrumb trail in there as well. I would expect a breadcrumb trail above this, right, to take me back to the list of products. For an interest of time, I'll skip that right now, but I would generally expect a breadcrumb trail in there as well. Well, either above or below the title. Okay. So let's hit add now. Okay. We can see what happens, right? What's happening here? It's go ahead and submitting to our API, isn't it? Do you see that?
Yeah, it's giving you the...
So it's going ahead and submitting to the API, but then the page is getting refreshed, right? Effectively, right? I want to handle this with what? What do I handle this with? What did we just finish talking about?
AJAX.
AJAX. Okay. So we want to handle that. You remember I added an ID of add product form, right? So I can use that as in my handler. So I'm going to go ahead and add that underneath the code that we've already written. So $, this was the add product form. So when you submit that form, I want to say event.prevent default. So prevent default is what's actually going to prevent it from going to that other page. And then I want to get the data from what's in the form fields, right? So you remember from the video we watched, how do I get the data from the form fields? What's a quick way to do that?
Just grab the value of the input.
Was you use the $sign and then the ID and then .val?
Okay, so I could do that, you're thinking, for each field, right?
Yeah.
So like I could do name is $, dot like that?
Exactly.
Sure, that could work. And then I could do that for each of the fields. So I could say name, category, and price.
And that's not the best way, though, is it?
It's okay. It's okay. It does make it potential. There is some benefit there if I want to validate this on the client side. So I could grab each of those objects and in of them separately, or kind of a shorthand I can say is const form data is equal to take the form and call serialize. That gives me all the data from the form in kind of one go.
If you didn't put the serialize on there, would that just be a JSON?
Well, if I put it here, it would be just the jQuery object. It would still be a jQuery selector. That serialize, let's look at the jQuery documentation on that one. Serialize basically goes and turns it into, I think, a string. So serialize works on the form. And I think, yeah, they do a console log here. We could easily do that ourselves. So if I say console.log form data and see what's in there. Let's look at, pull those things out. There we go. So there's my updated code. Console. If I leave it blank, this is what serialize does. It generates that. See that? Name equals, category equals, price equals. So if I put in like test other 200, see, that's what serialize does. See that?
Yep.
So it's actually giving us a string.
Yeah, I don't get how you pull that apart. I think we already did it.
Yeah. If you need to pull it apart, I would go back to this approach. If you do, for whatever reason, need to pull it apart, I would just grab each of the individual values that way. The upside of doing it this way is it's easy to pass on to your AJAX call, or to pass on as like part of a URL, for instance, because it's already got that sort of syntax. So if you need to pick it apart, I wouldn't pick it apart. I would just go back to here. Cool?
Yep.
Okay. So let's say I want to send this. Basically, it's going to be very, very similar. So I can pull this code down. So when I submit the form, it's still going to be method post, name category, that, etc. Here I'm going to use the form data and pass that through. Okay. So if anything goes wrong, I'll show it in an alert. Although maybe I want to show that in the UI. So let's make a place for that. So after the buttons, maybe we give a little area there with an output tag. So I can spit it into that output tag here. So if something goes wrong, $, add product form, output .html. So that way I've got a place to see it on the UI. Okay. And that's, yeah, that looks good. So test other one add error, internal server error. Again, I need to give that, make that easier to read. But that comes down to changing how things work on the server with Joy. But you can see it's kind of telling us that inherently in the error, it's kind of telling us that there already is a product with the name test. You see that? Right. So let me say this is maybe test 6. I think that's the number I haven't used yet. There we go. So now I've got it as a form. You see that? Questions?
Can you go back to your AJAX real fast?
Yep. What do you have a question about?
No, I just didn't get the fail, and I was making sure I had it right.
Yeah. That's what I had there. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. So we have a page, right? We have a page that I can go add products with, right? That's nice. We haven't dealt with how to deal with errors. That's okay. We'll look at that tomorrow. But as long as everything works, right? Great. Cool. So I can add a product there. What if I want to edit a product? Isn't there a lot in common? Maybe. Editing products is actually very similar to adding them. There's some gotchas though. One thing I want to do though before we leave here, remember we put this button to add products right now? Add products at the beginning?
Mm-hmm.
Remember it still does this, right? So what does it need to do now?
Link to the
Needs to link to the other page, right? So what I need to do, we'll comment out that code here, right? I don't need that code anymore. You understand that? So I don't need the code to respond to when you click on it anymore. Because what I need to do is I just want to make that a link, right? So if I comment out that code, we go to the home page, right? So I've got a button here, right? If I want to send you to another page, what tag do I want that to be?
anchor.
Anchor, right? Okay, so let's just change that to an anchor. And let's say I actually don't need the ID anymore. So this might be href points to / product / add. Cool. So if I click on that link now, I get to the add product page instead. Right, so if I want to add edit buttons, right? If I want to add edit buttons to each of these items, what kind of tag should they be? Probably an edit tag.
An anchor.
Yeah, it's probably an anchor. Okay, so if I add that, just in the interest of time, I think I'm going to add it to the end. So the end of the card body, so the card body's here, end of it would be down here. Div. I'm just going to use alignment to get it over on the right. So text right. And I want to anchor tag there. And maybe I want to go to product edit. Now, the problem here, right, if I just have the link as product/edit, it doesn't know which product I want to edit, correct?
Yep.
So somehow in that link, it needs to tell it what product I want to edit. And the easiest way to do that is to just use the ID. So if I say for my route, it's going to be /product/edit/ the ID. Okay, now I have that in my route. Make sense?
Yep.
So let's create a route for that. Actually, I should probably check my layout first to just make sure that that's working. Okay, so I've got my edit button there. Okay, and it goes to edit product edit 64, which is what I would expect. Okay, so in server.js, we need to add another route, and let's add it down here. And just like the other one needed to be a get route, this still needs to be a get route. Actually, I'm going to move it. I'm going to do it earlier. I'm going to do it up here. So app.get /product/edit/ID. So that's going to give me a place to put that edit page. And I can do a quick test kind of using the add product page as a decoy, as a kind of setup to say, well, it's basically going to be the same view. And I'm going to give it a title of edit product. Now, if I try this here, okay, so I get something. The title here says edit product, but it says add here, right? So I probably need another view to deal with adding, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I've got one view for adding a product and another view for editing. So let's duplicate the add view, because the edit view is going to be very similar. So I'm going to make a copy of that. And we're going to call this product edit.handlebars. So I got product add and product edit. In the edit product view, I can then change the things I need to change. So edit, the ID of this form is now edit product form, and it would need to be a put instead. Okay.
Are we going to pull in the data that's already there?
Yes, we do need to pull in the data that's already there. You're correct. So I can change that to use my edit view, and this is what you should see at this point. You following with me so far? So we basically just duplicated the view and made a few minor tweaks. Big ones being it needs to be a different method, and it needs to have a different title here. Plus a different ID. Okay. So let's say we've got that. Okay. Now, Paul, you're right. We need to pull in the existing data, right? So where can we get the existing data? Well, we can't get that in the view. We need to get that in the route. Does that make sense? Okay. So we already know the ID. So I can go grab that off the URL. So that would be const ID is equal request.params.id. And that's really, it's the same thing as what I'm doing here, right? Because again, it's part of the URL. And then I need to go grab the product. So const product or how should we get the product? I guess we were doing it with promises down here, right? So I probably need to say db.find product by ID. And I've got the ID. And then when I get that product back, we can render the page. If something goes wrong, then I'm going to do the same thing as I did previously and just send it to next. So if I do get a product, I'm going to say if product okay. Now remember we did a little if here to check if there's a product or not. I want to do that same kind of check to say, well, if for whatever reason you click on a product that's already been deleted, then we're going to render this 404 page. Cool. So far it's very similar. The only real difference is that I want to do that. I might say edit product as the title here. Again. So I'm passing the product on to the view. Any questions so far?
Nope.
Okay. Let's go back to the view. Let's see if it renders correctly. Okay, so no errors. That's at least good. Going down to the bottom of my logs. Yep. Okay, no errors. So in the view, one thing that we commonly need to do is send the ID, right? So the way that this is set up, is there a place on here, by the way, for the ID? Is there a form field for it?
No.
There's not. That might be a problem, right? So I might need to put in a field for it, right? But do I want the user to be able to edit that field?
No.
Probably not. Okay, so how can I put in a field that the user can't edit?
Disabled, I think.
Well, disabled would mean that the user can see it and they can't edit it, but it also means it's never actually sent to the server.
Read only?
Okay, read only has the same problem as disabled. I want it to be invisible.
Can you make it hidden?
I can make it hidden. Yep. So this is one of those places where, well, we need a hidden field. So input, the ID is ID. Name is ID. And this is type hidden. So by it being a hidden field, the user won't be able to see it. And because it's a hidden field, I don't need to have a label for it either. And that's why I'm also not creating a form group for it. So that,
I'm not getting it. Why do that? I mean, why include it at all? If you can't edit it, you don't want to edit it, why even put it on to hide it?
I need to send that data to the server. The server needs to know the ID. Does that make sense? The server needs to know the ID.
You gotta pull it from the text, the input field.
Well, it can't. The server doesn't have access to your front end. The front end only has access to what you send it. So if I don't send it the ID, it doesn't know what the ID is.
Okay.
So I need to have a place for it so that it can be sent to the server. Okay. And then I need to specify the value of that field. Okay. So what is the value of that field? Probably a handlebars expression, right? What goes in there?
Just be ID, right?
Would it just be ID? Okay, let's test it in the browser real quick. See if that works. Okay, you'll see you can't see the field there. If I go, let's say inspect, I can go find it in the code, but what's the value set to? See, the value's not set, right? ID isn't set because look at how I sent the data. I sent it as a product object. it's named product. So it's actually product.id. With me?
Yeah.
Okay. So product ID, now the value's there, and you can see it's set to 64.
As an alternative, you could wrap that form in each, right? And then put product, and then you wouldn't need to do that. Am I right on that?
No, because each only works with arrays.
Maybe it's with.
With would work. Yeah, I could wrap it in
Okay.
with, and then I could shorthand the product dot. I'm going to just leave it as is and go through it this way. So it's product dot. Here, I'm going to also need to set the value because I want to also show the values for each of these fields. So the initial value here on that same token would be product, product.name. And the value of this one would be product.category. And then this one down here would be product.price. I'm going to format that. Okay, well, that seems to have done nothing. Okay. Any questions on that? Can I see I'm putting the values in there for each of the fields?
Yeah.
So if I refresh the page now, all the current values are there. See that? So I've populated it with the kind of the current values. So Paul, you were saying earlier, we need to populate the data. That's how we do it. See it?
Okay.
Get it from the database, throw it in. It's really this edit product page, if you take a really close look at it, is really not that different from the view page that we had, right? You kind of understood what we're doing here. That leads you a lot to understanding this, right? Because they're really not that different. Okay. Now I probably want to name that. I want to change that button to say edit instead of add, or maybe save. I probably want it to be save on the add page as well. Okay. So change both those buttons to save. And when I submit it, what is it giving me back? Oh, okay. So I think one of the things I missed in the route, right? So I pointed to API/product, but when I implemented my REST API on Thursday, this route is actually needs the ID in it as well. So this would actually be /product ID. Cool.
Yeah.
So API product ID is the action there. Refresh, save. Why is it saying it cannot get? Cannot get API product 64. Well, it shouldn't be a GET request. It should be a PUT request. Okay. I guess the browser's doing something that I don't expect. Either way, I need to do it through AJAX anyway, so I don't know that it matters. So if I want to add this one, you remember how I kind of set this up for the ad page, right? Can we kind of take the same approach? So let's say I duplicate this code here, right? So this is how I add a product. Editing a product should be fairly similar. So add product form. This is now when the edit product form is submitted. And you get the data from that form. Now I might clean this up a little bit, and rather than duplicating the ID, I could say evt.target here. So that would refer to whatever form was submitted. And we don't have to duplicate it. This now needs to be a put. But I do have a little bit of problem in the sense that I need to get the ID of where I want it to go. Although I could get that from the form. So the URL could be event.target attribute. I could get the action from the form. And that would have where it's going to get posted to. Question?
What's event.target?
Event.target is what triggered the event, right? So here I'm in the submit event, right? For the form, right? So event.target would be the form. Does that make sense?
Why there though? Why not just event or the URL itself, or I don't know, it's just not coming clear.
So when I need to figure out what the URL is, right, it's API product ID, right?
That's the target.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to, well, the event.target is the whole form tag itself. So what I need to get to, though, is that URL, which is where this ATR
all right, I got it.
to. So I say, give me the form, give me the action attribute of that form, so that we're posting the same place that the form is set to post to. Okay, so let's see if that works. Now I don't remember what the response is from that path, so I want to see what comes back. And I may end up needing to go ahead and get the ID anyway. So if I try this, save, it says 1. Okay, so this case it doesn't give me back the ID, but I have it. I can go get it. So maybe I get it from the field. So const ID is equal to $ID .val. So I've got to get the ID anyway. I could just go ahead and change this to be that if I wanted to. And maybe I'm going to go back. Maybe I should go back and change that here. So I could do the other way here. API product / so I need the ID in there. And then when I want to build the path for where to send it back, I want to send this back to product ID. Okay, let's try that. So save it. We go back here. Questions? me try changing the price. So boots and changing some of these attributes. So 1,000, say buckle. Okay, so we can see both of those two things change. Cool. So I've got a page where I can change any of these attributes. So we got an add page and we got an edit page. Questions so far? Questions on the edit page? Okay, so I edit it, and is there anything else I needed to do here? I'm trying to remember. I think that's good. Clean up a little bit. That's my edit. If oh, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, I know I'm forgetting something. So one thing I know in here, I can get to the edit page from any of these links here, right? But one of the things I don't have access to is from this page, there's no edit button, right?
Yeah.
So general kind of rule of thumb is there should be one here as well. So from here, I also want to be able to edit it. So there should be two ways to get to the edit page oftentimes. So in there, I want to add, in the product view page, I do want to add a link to edit the product. So similar to where I kind of put it at the bottom, or maybe I put it in this group here, maybe next to the buy button. Let's put a link. And so the href would be /product /edit /the ID, which should just be ID here because I've already done the with wrapper. So this could be edit. I need to give it some classes. So I've got a large button for the buy now button. I might make this one a little bit smaller. So if I leave off button large, that's probably pretty good. So I've got an edit button there. Now it's not the primary button because the buy now it is. So maybe this is the secondary button. So you've got the primary button and the secondary button. So that way I have two ways to get to the edit page. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can understand why the user might want that both ways. So, make sure that there's, oftentimes you'll need to have more than one way to get to that functionality for usability purposes. Okay. So we can get to the edit. That all works fine. Let's see what else. I think as far as CRUD's concerned, which parts have we knocked off? So remember, CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. So which parts of those can we do now?
Everything but delete.
Yeah.
Everything but delete, right? So I probably want to add some way to delete products, right? And I probably want that to be accessible from both here and here, right? So let's just start with the home page. Okay. So on the home page, let's add another button right next to the edit button. So I'm going to make this text danger or button danger because I want it to be like, oh, be careful. This is going to delete your product. And where do I want this to go? Well, deleting, there's more than one way to deal with deleting. We could deal with deleting as a separate page. And sometimes if you have a lot of data that you maybe need to show the user, hey, this is everything that's going to go away. Sometimes doing that as a separate page, kind of like we did with the edit, is helpful. So I might say product delete and send it that way. But if I'm deleting a product, I probably don't need an entire page, right? So what would be what could I do instead? What could I do instead? I just want to know, are you sure, right?
Just a prompt.
Just some sort of prompt, right? So rather than making this a anchor tag, I will make this a button. And this is one of those strengths where Bootstrap's great because it styles your, as we kind of already saw, your buttons and your anchor tags look the same, right? So I can easily switch it over. So I've got this one. I might need a delete. So I might say delete. The idea is this delete product. Maybe from list. And the reason I'm giving this such a long name is because I want the behavior to be a little bit different when you delete it from the product view page. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want that to be a little bit different. That's why I'm adding it there. One of the things that I need to know, though, when I'm clicking that button, I need to know which product I'm deleting. Okay. So to do that, I want to add a data attribute. So remember, anything you put as data dash, you start that way. You can put any sort of additional data that you need. So in this case, I'm going to say data dash ID. And this will be the ID of the product. So that way I can refer to that ID in my front end code. Otherwise, I'd have no way to get the ID of the product that you want to delete. Cool? Okay.
Wait a minute. Data hyphen ID, that can be anything?
Data hyphen. If you start a property, if you start an attribute in HTML with data hyphen, you can then put anything you want there. Because you're creating your own HTML attribute, basically. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Bootstrap uses that data dash for a lot of things, if you've kind of seen in some of the examples. So I'm just kind of making that up.
Oh, okay. That's why we're using a button, because you can't do that with just an anchor tag.
I could do that with an anchor tag, but if I was using an anchor tag, what does an anchor tag do by default? It sends you to another page, right? The reason I'm using a button is because I don't want to send the user to another page. That's why. But I could have done data ID on either of those things. If I had a link, though, I would have probably put the ID into the href, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So let's add a handler for that. Delete product from list. And I want to add that to the end of here. $. $hash delete product from list. So when you click on the button, I want to ask the user, are you sure? First. Are you sure that you want to delete this product? I might want to maybe tell the user what product they're deleting. So I think actually I need a data name as well. So data name is here. So that way I have both of those pieces of information. So I have both their ID and their name. The only reason I need the name is because I want to show it in the message. So you'll remember that we've used prompt, right? And we've used alert, right? The first example, we used both of those. Prompt to ask the user for information, and alert to just show a message. Do you remember? Yep.
Sorry, misclick.
Yeah. Do you remember that there's a third one to just ask them yes or no? So the other one is confirm. So confirmation dialog says yes, yes or no, do you want to do this? So we want to say confirm, and then I need to give it a message, right? So I might say here, are you sure that you want to delete the thing? So I need the name there. I don't have the name yet, so I need to fix that. So const name is equal to, this is where I do need to refer to the event target, because I need to know what triggered the event, right? So I need to know which button you clicked on. So if I go to the button you clicked on and then ask for data, and I think I can just ask for the name that way. So AWD target dot data name. Okay, so I've got a bunch of delete buttons, and there it goes. Are you sure you want to delete African crate boots? Do you see how that gives me, well, what's going on there? So the button's initially not doing anything. Oh, I know why it's not doing anything. I know why it's not doing anything. So remember with IDs that you can only have one of them?
Yeah.
Right? So only the first button on the page works right now. I can click this delete button and it works, but none of the others work. Because ID only works once, so it's supposed to be unique. So I actually need to change this from being the ID to being a class, because multiple things can have the same class. Cool?
Yep.
Okay. So delete product from list is the class, and that means I need to go back here and say dot in the selector. Okay, so now there we go. The other buttons work. So you see when I click on the delete button, it brings up this prompt, this confirmation dialog, and it includes the name of the thing. Yay! You see it says OK and cancel.
Yeah.
So what I want to happen is if they hit OK, it will actually delete the product, but if they hit cancel, it won't. Cool? So the way that confirm works is basically it returns true if they hit OK and false if they hit cancel. So I could either directly put this in an if, or I can save the result to a variable. So I might say, save this here, confirm. Although I probably want to give that a different name. Name, then confirm. Avoid confusion. So let's just call it yes. If yes. If yes, then we want to actually delete it, right? So there I want to initiate an AJAX request. And the AJAX request is going to be a delete method. I don't need to send any data with it. I just need the ID. And so the ID I need to get from the button, just kind of like I got the name. So ID is event.target data ID. So I've got the name and the ID, and then if they say yes, we'll go delete it. So maybe done. And maybe I'll just show this in an alert. So alert. And let's just show the result. And otherwise, similar to how I did in the first example, I'll just show if it fails, I'll just show that in an alert as well. So, because I'm using the confirm to say yes or no, and then I might as well use the alerts then to deal with the cases where it's successful or failed. Okay. Let's test that real quick in the browser. So now if I hit delete and I say okay, see African black crane boots, it's there, right?
Yeah.
Watching? Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. I get back a response of 1. It says it did delete one thing. Okay, that's good. Now, it's still here, right?
Yeah.
If I were to click the link on that, though, it would say product not found because it's not actually in the database anymore. So it didn't actually refresh the page, right? It deleted it, but it didn't refresh the page, right? So that might be one thing I would maybe want to do once the delete is done. So in here, I might say, I think window.location, and I think I can then call reload on that to reload the page. So in the case where it's successful, let's reload the page. Here I say African wild dog boots. Let's delete it. Okay. There we go. Page refreshed. Okay. So we have a delete. Any questions on that code at all? So we have a way to add products, we can edit products, and we can delete products. And I hope one of the things you get through this is that there's a lot of different ways that maybe you can play around with these tools to kind of build it the way that makes sense for whatever your application is, right? Yeah. Because there's more than one way to implement this. For instance, I have used the confirmation dialog here and alert, but you can actually use Bootstrap dialogues as well here, Bootstrap modals, to make this look more friendly, which is what I'd recommend you do. Rather than using confirm and alert, I would recommend doing the Bootstrap dialogues for that. So, Ben, any questions? Caleb?
No.
Corey?
Not at the moment, no.
Daniel, anything?
Actually, I'm having a problem with my edit product page.
What's your issue that you're running into?
So when I click save, nothing happens, and in the console, it's trying to put onto /product/ edit/API/product, which I don't think is their URL.
Yeah, so make sure that the URL that it's going to is this API product and then the ID of the product. So make sure you have that line correct, because I'm going to guess that that's what you have different.
Okay, we got lab day tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I do need to go still over tomorrow. We're going to be in class. I'm trying to think, does it make more sense to go over? I think I really do need to go over Joy tomorrow, because one of the things that we've missed in this whole thing is how to properly show errors, right?
Yeah, I don't know about everybody else, but I got a lot of catch up to do. Did the test this weekend, and
Yeah.
where I'm at, I would be going through the lecture on Thursday and try and get caught up. And now I got
so
this.
Then let's push the next part, the Joy part, over to Wednesday. I think you're probably not the only one there.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, let's push Joy back to Wednesday. We'll talk about Joy on Wednesday then. And how to deal with errors is basically the whole gist of Wednesday then.
Awesome.
Like, I just connected my first database to my first lab.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Obviously, we've still got a lot of topics to cover, which is kind of where I'm like, well, yeah, you're right. We do need to take a lab day, but it's also kind of, we've got so many other things to cover too.
Well, we got a little bit of slack in the schedule too towards the end, don't we? Because I remember looking at the schedule and seeing the last 2 weeks we're working on the final project.
Yeah, I did try to reserve 2 weeks at the end for your final project. Let me just say that if you don't have those 2 weeks, you're probably going to be regretting it later. Because, well, I guess we'll see. I mean, if the other way this goes, if we take the 2 projects that you're working on labs and those were to turn into your final projects, then that's maybe a place where we can cut some slack. If those 2 turn into your final projects, which maybe they can, then we'll see. Yeah, so that's something I have to definitely look at in terms of the schedule. But I think you're right. Let's call tomorrow a lab day.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. I'd rather take what we're doing here and build it and make it into a better product than another side project, especially if we can go deeper in the material and not just have the slack time at the end.